You're a
Video.
bad guy.
I'm a bad guy?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a good guy. I'm your mom.
Yeah, but then you have to hold this and now cut it out of your hand.
What?
Like this.
Thank you. Look, I've tried to record this intro like at least 5 times, but Bryson's home and Deacon's crying. All I want to tell you is entrepreneurship is not easy. Parenthood is not easy. When you are wild enough to combine the two, God bless you, because that is certainly a challenge, but it's possible, it's doable. And the dude that I'm having this conversation with today, Todd Herman, is an elite performance coach who has worked with people from athletes and Olympians to royal families to Fortune 50 companies to billionaires to everyday small business owners just getting started. He's got 2 little ladies of his own. And I've worked with him personally when I signed up to work with him at the VIP level of the 90-day year a year ago. This is 2016. Started working with him in 2015. I love his perspective. He asks really smart questions. He's a really smart guy. He's a really snazzy dresser. And at the heart of all of his work, he's about people getting out of their heads and onto the field of play to do the work that lights them up, to do the work that they were meant to do. So, hold on, buddy. Join us for this Okay, baby. Join us for this conversation. I'm going to make notes below this video just so you can skim to whatever parts you need because, again, maybe you have a limited time. But there are all kinds of golden nuggets in here. I encourage you to watch and make sure you sign up for his free training at nikkielledgebrown.com/Todd, where he goes into even more tactical, strategic details. Enjoy the conversation. But what I want to talk to you about is I'm starting this Naptime Empires conversation, before it actually becomes whatever it's going to become. If nothing else, it's a conversation to have. And when I have hundreds of responses from moms who are entrepreneurs or want to be, the biggest pattern I could see when I was reading through these things is like, ladies, we have got to lower our freaking expectations, which isn't like an inspiring message. It's not what people want to hear, because you want to hear like, I want to be more there for my family and more there for my business. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the answer. Anyway, so that's what I'd love to talk about.
Okay. So do you want to actually sort of dive into that psychology of having more, or do you want to go into...
Let's rewind, because that's where we're going to end up.
Yeah.
We have Deacon in the chorus in the background, but first let's rewind. So Todd Herman, why should we listen to you?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that people should listen to me. This is like my meta-philosophical idea. I think way too many people are out there, and this actually gets into a lot of the stuff that we'll end up talking about. But I think a lot of people out there don't do enough listening to themselves, and then they wonder why they maybe fall in love with some sort of guru or leader that, a year or two later they feel disillusioned by, because they didn't know themselves in the very beginning. And so listening to me, take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I think the one thing that I'll bring to the table more than many other people is, and I talk about this in my videos, is I have a very lack of appreciation for people that stand on the stump and say, hey, I did it and you can do it too. And it sounds motivating and nice, and that person sees that, oh, that person's a female just like me, or they're a mom, or whatever the case is, and so it delivers some sort of sense of possibility for them. But I think that we live in a day and age where we should be past that. We know enough, or we know a lot about how people become successful and have become successful, whatever that means for people. And I think that we should be leaning more on models and frameworks and maybe some studies, and hey, how do I fit into that equation, so that we can set expectations for ourselves of where we can be 30 days from now or 90 days from now. Because anything other than that will only breed a whole bunch of self-doubt and a lot of self-judgment and self-criticism, because, oh, well, Nikki did it faster. Yeah, Nikki did it faster because she had a skill set she learned while in university and college, where she spent 4 years studying the art of communication. That gives you a leg up on some people. But it also might give you, because you didn't have some other skill, maybe it put you behind someone else, And so listening to me, I've done this for 19 years now. And I spent my wife and I, we were sitting down, this is like a few months ago, and we were kind of calculating. She was asking me, how much time have you actually spent doing like one-on-one work? Like if this video wasn't here and it was just me and you on a Skype session, how many hours? It's over 28,000 hours of one-on-one work, 28,000, so if, we want to follow Malcolm Gladwell's idea of it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something, which I don't necessarily think is true, but it's a lot. So I've crawled inside the heads of, people that have done phenomenal things, Olympians, billionaires and entrepreneurs, or nap time empire moms. And the reality is we're not that different in many ways. And there are some fundamental principles at play as to how to maybe think and look at the goals that we're trying to achieve so that we feel really good about them and very motivated by them and not demotivated. Because I think that's the one thing, when it comes to goals, like even now, I'm like, I know there's some woman out there shuddering at the idea of, I got to set a goal, or the idea of goals, because their only experience of goals has been negative. Right. Either they've never achieved them or they've never set them because they don't even know where to start. Or it's funny because there's some people out there who they don't want to be a part of the whole goal group, even though they know intellectually that goals are important. Like, at the end of the day, our mind and our brain is set up to be goal seeking constantly. Like everybody is setting goals every single day of their lives. We're all doing it. Going to the grocery store and getting the items on your list is a goal activity. And we're very good at doing them. It's just, we don't think about it in the areas of our lives, or we don't spend enough time on the areas of our lives that are the most important to us. We fill up our lives with a bunch of activity that maybe makes us feel good in the moment, but doesn't actually lead us to the life that we want.
Right.
And so when it comes to this goal stuff, like how do we set goals, or how do we even decide on what goals to go after? I think in the case of like nap time empire moms, people who are trying to do things at home, we need to draw really freaking tiny circles. Our circles need to be a lot smaller. And what I mean by that is there's this story out of ancient Greece where someone who is going to, I think it's one of Socrates' philosophical schools, and he went to another mentor and he said, I have to write a story about my small town. And he's like, my small town isn't remarkable. Like there's nothing interesting about my small town. And the mentor gave him like profound advice. And he said, draw tiny circles. And what he said was, do you have a church? You've got a church in your town, or he didn't use the word church, but whatever the word was at the time. And he said, yeah. He's like, does that church have a door? Yes, that church. Yeah, the church has a door. Is there anything that's on top of the door, like any sort of sculptures or figurines that, because, back then they did, there's some good artisan work. And he said, yeah, there is. He's like, tell your story about that. So we took the idea of, I need to write a story about my town. And he said, when we got it all the way down to the little space right above the door of your church. Now that is something that's really easy to talk about and write about, because you can get into the details of things, right? And so we talk about this. So in the context of, someone who wants to start a business at home, that's a big freaking circle. How could we draw a smaller circle?
We become a black hole.
Yeah. Because there's so many things that go into it. And so one thing I know that I'm really good at, and I can go, right after this call, and not today, but tomorrow, if we were having this tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning, I would be getting off this call and I'd be going and I'd be talking to one of my athlete clients. So I can jump between entrepreneurs and athletes really quickly, because in my head, I have the 30,000 foot view of what's most important, because we all get lost in the weeds a lot of times. So from above, I can go, okay, this is what's most important. And then I can continue to draw the circles all the way down with someone until we find, okay, well, this is the one thing. This is the most important thing for you right now. Mm-hmm. So the tiny circle for someone that's trying to build a business at home, that means they're starting up right now. The tiny circle is almost every single one of your activities should be about, how do I get the money? And it doesn't sound like it's really motivating to some, because some people go, oh, well, I want to have something that speaks to me, and or whatever that thing is. But at the end of the day, in the game of business, bringing in profits is important. Mm-hmm. And so what is a defining goal that you can have, that all the activity that you do has to filter through that. And this isn't something just for a Naptime Empire mom.
Right.
Mark Zuckerberg does this every single day. Mark Zuckerberg has a overarching governing goal that anyone that comes to him with an idea of what Facebook could be or should be or a new feature or whatever, he ultimately asks them this one question. And his one question is, will this help us grow? That's it. You've heard me say before about I use the will it make the boat go faster analogy, and that is the America's Cup team, which is the yachting team that races around the world. Everyone on the boat and on the team can come up with any suggestion about how that team can become more successful or win races or improve or whatever. But the final question that the captain asks someone is, will this make the boat go faster? That's it. That's the governing question for that business. That activity is, will it make the boat go faster? Why is that important? Because he knows the fastest boat wins.
Right.
That's it. He didn't ask the question, will it make the boat be safer? Because they're not in the safety business.
Right.
They're in the speed business.
So because this is another question that someone had asked, because I was collecting the Ask Todd questions, and it was like, okay, you talked about the differences between men and women and how we set goals, and you talk about context switching when you're doing this, and then you scroll over to this, and then you scroll over to this, and you lose a lot of your day. And especially if you have a limited amount of hours, whether you're a mom or whether you're working a full-time job, either way, like this is something that really applies to everybody. What about if you just have such a limited time? You've got the idea of like what you're going to work on, but then you're scared to let go of all the other squirrely goals, not just context switching, but goal switching. So are you basically saying, focus on this one goal? For example, if you're just starting up, it needs to be, what can I do that's actually going to make money? Which, to be honest, I wasn't thinking about it, but that's exactly what happened, because I was able to create a service and then have literally 100 clients in my first summer. And so it was like instant. So I wasn't spinning my wheels on things that didn't count. I was literally working with people. But I feel like a lot of people get stalled out before they even start there. So you're basically saying, like, if you're in that position and you're feeling stalled, you need to build the momentum, do what you need to do to be able to actually make sales, because then you can kind of buy yourself breathing room to focus on the other goals.
Totally. Exactly. And like, again, like, what some people do is they travel down the path of thinking way too far ahead and creating problems for themselves before they've ever happened. Mm-hmm. And so, because I know that people will do this right now, they will go, okay, if I focus on the sales and getting immediate money in, maybe that's because the easiest business to go out there and start is a consulting business. That's the easiest business on the planet to start. Mm-hmm. Low overhead, low, again, like low costs, low barrier of entry to get into it, and you get immediate money. Like, that's okay. Someone says, yeah, but now I'm trading time for money. Yeah, but you have no money right now. Right. I'd much rather have the time that I have spent be bringing in income. That's if you really need to bring in income. If you've got the luxury of having a big, bank account backing you up, maybe that's not your biggest concern right now. But for most people, it really is. And so my point is that they travel down the pathway of, but now I'm going to be trading time for dollars. And yeah, but at least that's a good problem to have. I'd much rather have that problem than trading time for no dollars. Right. Like putting a whole bunch of time and energy into something and just frustrating myself and my husband or my wife or whoever that would be. Right. Mm-hmm. But to use the point of drawing the tiny circles, it's not only am I going to be focusing my time on money-making activities, I'm going to be focusing on making this business as simple as freaking possible. Mm-hmm. People go through the pathway of complexity way too fast. They try to make it way too complex. I know that this is a reality for, stay-at-home moms, especially who are doing, Deacon's sleeping right now, but if he woke up,
right.
So drawing tiny circles is the idea of, okay, so if I take a look at all the things that I need to do to keep my business simple and make money, can you put them into columns of what can I do in 10 minutes or 15 minutes? Mm-hmm. Like, that's just, you're operating in a different world. So if that's the world you're living inside of, then that's the constraint you're going to have is being able to chew on things for 10 minutes so that you can go and knock off something quick and get a quick win or a quick victory. Or instead of you saying, but I need to write a blog post and it takes me 2 hours to write a blog post or whatever the activity is. Okay, well then don't sit down and write a blog post. You write the opening paragraph. And is it ideal? No, of course it's not. We're not talking about ideal worlds here though.
Mm-hmm.
I don't live in an ideal world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't. I have multiple businesses. And so I need to switch sometimes in the middle of my day to go to work on another business. But when I'm working inside of the online thing, I am working on that thing only. I am not thinking about, you know, my investment business, you know, trying to analyze other people's business plans. Like I'm working on this one thing.
Right. So you would say then, because this is something also that we were talking about in this Facebook group, it's like, okay, we have this list, and I was showing them like my weekly timesheet, my weekly plan sheet back from my Mary Kay days, where it's just days of the week and then the hours. Yeah. And it's like, well, it's one thing to fill something like that out when either you don't have kids or you have childcare covered. And some people do. And this is something that I wanted to talk about because I love the idea of constraints, which is what you talk about in the 90-day year, and not seeing like, oh, I can't do this because I have these excuse me, limitations, but just figuring out like, okay, these are the containers, or like you talk about with my friends and your clients, Aaron and Lisa, and how like, okay, if you have 15 hours that you're going to be able to work on your business, use that as a container, use that to drive and actually be more productive than most people who had 40 hours because you have this much time, which requires this much focus. And even if they're not in blocks, I was talking about how, okay, I just know these are the things that I need to do in this given day. Yeah. Have like in Asana a quick wins project where it's like, these are the things that really, they're not going to require a lot of brain space. Like I don't really have to be in the zone, but I can go there and get a quick win and that little check. And then in Asana, a little flying unicorn across the thing to get that little dopamine hit to be like, I did something. So that's the other thing that I would want to talk about is for moms, again, for moms or whoever, that like, having it all. Well, no, you do. You either need to get help with some of these things, whether it's childcare, whether it's housekeeping, whether it's grocery shopping, or whether it's an assistant and people helping you in your business, or you need to just adjust your goals, because consistently setting yourself up to fail is going to feel like poop, and it gets you really, really good at that ow mindset that you talk about. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, okay. So if we've decided that our ambition is to, start a business, then let's make sure that we do as much as we can to simplify the other parts of our life. You know, like if you're the type of mom who gets like great satisfaction over, you know, spending 2 hours in the kitchen, you know, crafting an amazing meal for someone, okay, make the decision to suspend that for a few months. Like, cause that's reality. Like, I mean, I'm not going to paint a picture to people saying like, hey, on like 15 minutes, you get to start right. Starting a business, like starting something, that is the equivalent of, you know, starting a business and trying to sell someone that they can do it in 15 minutes is the equivalent of someone going to the people who've got a rocket sitting on the launch pad in Cape Canaveral saying, oh, no, all you need is a 2-liter gallon of rocket fuel to get this thing off the ground. Mm-hmm. No, you don't. Mm-hmm. You need 2 freaking containers of fuel on the side of this thing to get it up into the orbit, because the hardest part of starting a business is the first part. It's the resistance part, just like getting the rocket. 85% of all the fuel it's going to ever take to get the rocket ship from here to the moon and back is used up in the first 2 miles of flight. 85%. The same thing in starting a business. Yeah. You know, 85% of all the fuel and effort it's ever going to take to get the business going is to just get it out of the stratosphere so that it can cruise and coast. And so, you know, take a look at your life. Where can we simplify? You know what? Family, we're going down to 5 basic meals that we're ever going to cook in this house. And they all take me 15 minutes to make. Mm-hmm. You know, that is it. That's a great constraint that we can apply. You know, if we have other kids, it's getting them to get involved. And here's one other thing that I think a lot of people really forget about. And I did this. There's the biggest mistake I ever made, and I wished I'd learned this earlier. So if someone's just starting out, seriously borrow this mistake I made and apply it. And that is, I tried to be the hero and show other people that I could do it on my own. And that is such a stupid way to go about trying to be successful at anything, because the meteoric rise, because there's been points in my career. Like, I'm not on this like shooting meteor where it's like freaking roses and daisies all the time and like just, you know, constant massive growth. But when I take a look at those points where there's like huge spikes in my growth or in income or in influence, whatever, it was always on the back of, I can literally go back to those windows of time and show, yep, I had a mentor right then and there. And yep, I started working with a mentor right then and there because they opened up a whole bunch of, different worlds for me, or they, gave my head a shake when I was, about to do stupid things, or make, just poor decisions. To that end, my point is that asking other people for help is huge. And so if you have this vision of where you're trying to take your family and starting this business, whatever that passion, not even a passion project, I don't even want to say that, whatever that business is, then enlist the help of your friends and family and tell them why you're doing this. And, because here's the reality. So many people are out there like totally bored with their lives. And a great part of what it is to be a human being is we love to help each other. And so you literally have an untapped group of resources around you that might be bored and unsatisfied with life. And they would love to feel useful in someone else's life to help them achieve a goal. And so, like Sophia Omarosa, who, built up a, billion-dollar brand. I mean, she was fantastic at the very beginning of asking everyone around her for help. And now I don't know if she's a billionaire yet, but she's pretty darn close to being a billionaire. But she just started out by drawing some tiny circles and getting them solved. So
I think that's so huge, especially for moms. And I know for me, it's been a huge deal, even to just, because Bryson's at school, he's in preschool. He does like 3 mornings, 2 full days. But just being able to get help with Deacon and like actually having a babysitter here for 3 hours, 2 mornings a week, that was like, because I'm here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be watching him. So, okay. And then what about when he's napping? Okay, well, could you do the laundry? Like just asking, it's something that I know I have struggled with.
Yeah.
So many people do, especially like military. We're independent. We're doing this on our own. We don't have family nearby. Like it's just, I think, one of the biggest hangups. And it's just something that I'm living through and realizing is like, you've got to either you have to ask for help or you need to scale back your goals and your dreams because you can't.
What's funny, if you think about the day and age that we live in right now, it's crazy how much easier it is for us to connect with other people. And yet I think that we're living in a day and age where isolation and depression is at its all-time high. We've got phenomenal capacity and capabilities to connect with human beings around the world. And yet most people are depressed and feeling isolated because they sit behind their computer.
Sorry to interrupt you. Speaking of isolated, Deacon's feeling isolated. I'll be right back. And he's still in his jammies, but it's not even 10:30, so don't judge. Okay, yes, depressed and isolated. It's true, and I get that way. And live in Hawaii for Pete's sake, but I stay in my house almost all the freaking time, like 23 hours a day sometimes.
Yeah, and so, but we never. It wasn't always this way. Like this idea that we're supposed to be, that moms nowadays are supposed to have it all. Like you're supposed to be a great working mom, and you're supposed to be a great stay-at-home mom. And then we create these ideas and these beliefs and these constructs in our heads of what that means. That means that I'm supposed to be doing all this stuff on my own. No, it's not. That's not what a great mom is supposed to be, or whatever that idea is, because literally just 60 years ago in how I grew up, I'm a farm and ranch kid from Western Canada. The complete philosophy in our area was, listen, the village raises the child. Mom and dad never had any problems whatsoever. And I never felt like mom and dad weren't doing their jobs. When I was dropped off at, Eddie and Gladys's, one of our neighbors, or at Marvin and Beatty's place, who were just down the road. I mean, literally our nearest neighbor was like 4 miles away. We had a very big ranch. And so, but today that is the construct, which is crazy because that means we've gone backwards. We haven't gone forward societally that way. And so, leveraging the community around you, or your friends and family, if you've got them around you, and getting them to help you out is important. And at the end of the day, Deacon doesn't care. Really, I mean, sadly, not to break it to you, but Deacon really isn't going to care that much if he has a real loving, doting babysitter there. Mm-hmm. At least he's getting loved and doted on, as opposed to a mom who's distracted and feels shitty about doing 2 things really bad. Yeah. Right now you feel crappy, and the kid's frustrated too.
Right. It's totally true because when she's here and she has this book that honestly, I had the book out because I was using it to put my laptop on. I was reading it, but she's like looking, it's like my first 100 words or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's like little Prince Deacon. He has so much attention right now. This is amazing, you know, for $10, $15 an hour. Like it's so worth it because then I can feel great about him being taken care of and I can feel great. Like I have 1 3-hour block at least to look forward to a week.
Yeah.
Where I know I can work, you know? Yeah. And so that's just, again, it's something that I'm realizing this time because I'm really in what you would call ramp up. I call it, I'm thinking like ramp up 0.5, maybe 0.33 or something. But there's just a lot I want to do. And it's because of this big vision that ultimately I have. And I think that's what we get stuck in because it's like, okay, I'm doing this. And I think a lot of people watching are probably like me where they tend to go to the workaholic mode.
Yeah.
It's easier to slip into the workaholic, pour it all into your business, even if you're doing mindless, whatever, than it is to spend 2 hours cooking dinner and being joyful about that or whatever, like peanut butter and jelly, you know, that's what you expect, dude. Yeah. Thankfully Jeremy cooks. But, so what would you say to that? Because it's like, okay, I want to do this because I do want us to have this particular lifestyle one day. But then at the same time, life is happening now. Life is precious now. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So it's that line that you're walking. So what do you say to that? Like the people who want to work, but then they want to, it's basically like you're excusing away your workaholism to justify one day you're going to spend more time focused on your family.
But hold on. We have to be careful with terms. Because is it really workaholism because you're spending 15 hours working in the week or whatever that thing?
Personally, I'm spending way more than that. I mean, I was up like past midnight, multiple nights in a row. So to me, I do think it's that extreme. Maybe to other people, it's not.
Yeah. But people who are ambitious do that. Like, I mean, I don't have a lot of hobbies. Yeah. Like, because I love doing this stuff. Like if I can get across to one mom out there and something shifts in the way that she looks at life or she sees herself or she sees the possibilities of what, you know, she might be able to do in the future, like that's worth it to me. Mm-hmm. You know, it's more worth it to me. And I loved golf. That's more worth it to me than me going to the driving range and hitting, you know, a bucket of balls for 45 minutes or however long this, you know, interview is. Mm-hmm. Right. So, but I think because one of the major influencers on the choices that people make in their lives is about how they perceive how other people are going to be judging them and seeing them based on what they're doing. So it's not that I honestly don't think that many women struggle with how they're setting up the rules in their head as to what they need to be doing as a mom. They're more worried about what the rules are in other people's head about what they're seeing them as being, because, you know, like, oh, Nikki, you got a babysitter for 15 hours a week, right? You know, that's the conversation that people fear more than anything else. Instead of, you know, which one do you love more? Do you love the vision of your future more than you love the opinions of the present from other people? Which one? Because one of them's going to win. You know, and so you got to choose which one that's going to be. And that takes a level of, you know, self-determination and and drive and some grit and some, like, you know, screw it. Like, I mean, this took me a long time to get to, but I truly could care less what someone thinks of me. I just don't care. I've got 2 little girls who think that daddy can't do anything wrong. And I have a wife, thankfully, who thinks pretty much the same way. So, and I've got, you know, parents who can't ever figure out what the hell I do in my life. And yet I've been doing it for 19 years. So, you know, but that's all I need. I don't need some, you know, keyboard jockey on the internet to try and determine, you know, what I'm gonna do with myself. So, you know, kind of a long way around to answer your question. I think there's actually a meta thing sitting on top of it. And that is, I think that some of the women here would be struggling more with the perception other people have of them if they went and got a babysitter, or if they went and asked their mother-in-law for help, or their mom, or whatever, you know. So, you know, this idea of balance, it's a very, very, very dangerous thing to do, and to be. I'm a big fan of, you know, I'm a big fan of Venn diagrams, you know, drawing 3 circles. You know, I'm really good at knowing what my 3 circles are, meaning, you know, I've got family, I've got friends, and I've got my business. And those are my 3 circles. And so in order for someone to get the time that they want from me, you you would better be one of those three things. You'd either better be a family member, you'd better be a friend, or you better be paying me money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
Because I would love to be able to spend every single waking moment serving every single person that could possibly want to be served, but I can't do it.
Right. Constraints.
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 Hashtag constraints.
Okay, so this is good. And I think a way to wrap up the Naptime Empires conversation, which again hasn't even officially started because I don't know what it's going to be because it's not.
It has started. It started.
It has started. Yes.
Started.
And that's my thing too. Like I want to be able to open up the conversation. I see it basically as a potluck because there is no one right way. You know, there's some people wanted to work more hours in this survey. Some people wanted to work fewer hours. Some people are happy with how they show up with family. Some people are happy with how they show up with business or unhappy with both. And what I would love is just to present, like, these are the different ways that people are doing it. This is what Nikki does. This is what Susie does. This is what so-and-so. And then you take what works for you and move on. But speaking of, because every time I think about it and I'm like, oh, I could help them with their businesses, but wait, Todd knows this better. Like, Todd can help them. And so what I would love to close on is one of the bigger questions that so many people ask is, like, those of us who've been goal damaged in the past, you know, where we have set the goals and then we didn't meet them and we have this negative self-talk, like we are total bees to ourselves, especially in those wee hours when we're like, no, just do it. Because otherwise, if you've been up for all these hours and you didn't get it done, then what was the point? How do we set goals and move forward? You know, you talk about 90-day cycles without like being scared of them, so that like we're setting them too small, so they're not exciting enough to reach. They're too big that we already feel defeated. So it's like, forget it. I'm not even going to do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a framework that I've worked with, that I started working with athletes on for the longest time. And it was really like almost accidental. And then that kind of accidental conversation I had with Turner was his name. And he was about 13 years old. And cause he was the type where he always set these, like, which is a guy thing to do. He's 13, but still we learn at a young age, like the ego sets the goal for guys. And it's like, I'm going to send this like completely outlandish thing. And then his only experience of goals was that he was never reaching them. And so I was like, okay, well, so, you know, what would be a good, a better, and a best goal for you? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so we worked through that framework of like, okay, well, a good goal is like something you'd be happy with. You know, you'd be happy that you achieved it. Are you going to go jump on the roof and like scream to your neighbors about it? No, but you're happy. Like, I mean, you know that the time and energy and resources you devoted to that goal, it brought something back. Cool. A better goal would be something where it's like, you know, you're pretty pumped. Like you're pretty excited that it actually got that number. And maybe it's 20% more than the good goal. Like if it was a number, maybe it was, you know, if my good goal was I wanted to earn $2,000 this month, my better goal is going to be, I'm going to earn like 2,500 or, you know, whatever it is for someone. And then your best goal is like, I like to set best goals that are extremely hard for me to reach. I don't tell that to everybody, but for me, that's because I mean, I've got no fear around goals at all. And so a best goal might be double the good goal. So it might be $4,000. It's like really stretching. And so it gives people multiple targets to feel good about. One mission though. They're all aligned on one mission. It's all underneath the same thing. It's me earning money or like income or revenue or the number of leads or opt-ins that I'm getting or what, like I've got a good number, a better number, and a best number. And anyone that I've ever worked with that on never stops using that. Like never stops using it. And I'm talking about, you know, whether it's stay-at-home moms working in the system or whether it's, hey, I've got 2 billionaire clients and we talk about GBB all the time, good, better, best all the time with their business, because it's just a good framework to think about the goal through. And so stair step your way through it, because at the very beginning, the worst thing that you can do is try and set goals that go way beyond your abilities and your skill set and are way too challenging. Because we talk about, I come from, working with athletes on the zone and the flow state, right? So like, how can I get you to get into the zone and the flow state? Well, the key to that is to get into the zone, we need to find something that's challenging enough. So that's, challenging for us to do.
Right.
And that we've got a high skill level in that area. So that I don't feel overwhelmed by it. I feel like I've got the skills to go do it. And that's how you get into the zone. How you can burn yourself out is to set something so challenging, so far beyond your skill level. So you've got low skill level and a high, ambition or goal that you're shooting for. I mean, you'll burn yourself out. That's not like, I'm a big person that talks about ambition all the time. I talk about hustle and ambition, two very different things. Hustle is just your ability to use perseverance and grit to get things done. Hustle is, hey, if you've got 15 minutes a day to work on something, but you do it, that's someone in my books that's, hustling.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing all they can with the 15 minutes they got. Good for you.
Micro hustle.
It's micro hustle, totally. So I don't know, does the GBB, the good, better, best, kind of help to answer that question then?
Yeah, I think so, because then once you've done that once, then you can adjust the next time too to see how it felt, because you talk about how you want to feel about it, and then you actually talk about what gets done, which is one of the things that got me so much when I first heard your stuff, was about potential versus performance. Because when people have asked me, what's your biggest fear? I'm like, honestly, my biggest fear is, like Dr. Wayne Dyer said, don't die with your music still in you. Yeah. And that's me, my biggest fear is, like, I feel like there's so much potential for what I could do and how I could serve and what our life could be as a family. And my biggest fear is just, like, straight up not getting it done, Yeah. And so anyway, so that's something that
because what you're referring to is, I tell people all the time that potential is just, it's not a word that we're allowed to use in my businesses. Like, it's a made up word because, because this is me, I'd be sitting in a hockey arena and I would be hearing a parent come up to me and saying, like, oh, my son has like so much more potential than what he's showing on the ice. So he's like so much better than, I'm like, no, he's not. No, he's not. Here's how I know that, because it's not happening right now. Because performance matters. And it sounds like it can be like harsh, but here's how you improve someone. You get the data and you get the truth. Because when I know where we're starting from, now I can plot the course. That's not hard for me to do. It's very simple for me to do. And it gives someone a sense of security and certainty that what they're going to be implementing will work, because people know when they've lied and when they've plotted a course from a point that they've lied from, right? Like, we know that that's the truth. So we're not going to be spending as much effort and energy and time, or we'll be avoiding things because we ultimately know that we started from a place of, falsehood.
Right.
So I want to know what your performance is. So to your point, when you talk about, like, I've got this big grand vision, I've got this all this potential. Like, I'm a big vision person. I've got a huge imagination, but the only thing that I care about is, am I taking care of this moment? Am I performing in this moment? Because when you stack all those things together, then the potential thing starts flowing out of you.
Right.
Plus, I have this intrinsic motivation of being curious and about, like, I wonder what's going to, like, the word I wonder just pops in my head, like, nonstop, almost like, I wonder what's going to, like, happen because of this thing, like this current launch that we're going through right now. Oprah Winfrey Network has reached out to me, wanting to know if they can get trained on the 90-day year system. That answers the question. I wonder what'll happen. I wonder if I put as much energy into creating great content for people, I wonder what'll happen. Well, it answers itself.
Well, two things that, while you were just talking, that popped into my brain were, number one, that applies, I think it was you, and you were talking about, like, doesn't matter if you thought about writing your mom a love note, and sending her a sweet. No, it matters if you actually sent it. And it's the same thing. Like, doesn't matter if you think that one day you're going to spend more focused time with your kids. No, it matters if you're actually doing it today. It applies to life and it applies to business too. And I love that. And then the second thing, and I guess this is what we can close on, because I'm sure you've got, launchy things to do. And, when we were in Vegas for the 90-day year event, and you had Brian Smith, the founder of UGG, there, and his quote about the quickest way for a tadpole to become a frog is to live every day joyfully as a tadpole. Yeah. So in this Facebook group, in this snapshot moment of time in June 2016, last night, this was a shower epiphany, TMI, that I had last night, where I was like, hey, why don't we do a tadpole challenge? So I'm hosting this group just through the end of June. And I'm like, every day, come in here and post what's the one thing that you will do. Because there's so many of us who have been like, I've been telling myself I would do all this stuff all year, and then I'm not doing it, so I'm do that, and blah, blah, blah. So come in here and post the one thing that you will do today to do your joyful tadpole duty. and then just keep coming back and then close that loop, then circle back at the end of the day to say, if you did it, what was a good little lesson learned, and don't feel like if you didn't do it today, now you can't do it tomorrow and everything is lost for the rest of life, like just start again tomorrow,
Yeah.
So.
Well, no, you brought up a good point. And that's, if there's one thing that the 90-day year does really well, the way that it's structured and the way that it's built is it closes feedback loops really, really quickly. And that's how the system is built, is that, you win in life by stacking as many little confidence chips or poker chips in front of you, and the person who can stack the most confidence chips is going to play the biggest. That's just the reality. Yeah. And so, we do that by we close these feedback loops, meaning that we get things done, in a short amount of time, or we set small little micro goals or small little micro projects to get things out there and working for us in the world. So yeah, definitely implement it then. Little tadpole challenge.
Yes, tadpole challenge. Okay, well, I want to thank you again so much for taking time to hang out with us and to share and to just have this conversation, because I just love having this conversation with you. And I love basically watching how such a wide variety of people are affected by what you're sharing and the work that you're putting out into the world, because again, it's not just about business. It certainly helps, but it's not just for entrepreneurs. But so I guess the takeaways, the encouragement, and you have 2 daughters. So if you could give one final, okay, this is what you're dealing with, and again, replace nap time empires with you have a limited container of time for whatever other reason. What would your pep talk be for those of us who are, have human constraints and more time constraints than most people do?
I think probably the best one isn't really a tactical one. It's a meta one. And that is that there are a lot of people around you who would love to see you win. And the only way that they can see you win or help you win is if they know what you're trying to win about. Like, what is the vision, or what's the thing that you're trying to get a victory on? And so I think because that is where you can add more people power and more horsepower to the things that you're trying to do, is if you can include other people in your journey, whatever that is. Frodo didn't go to Mount Doom on his own. He had Sam there with him the entire time, and his little gang of merry men. So that would be it.
Okay, cool. Ask for help, people. Ask for help. This is something that I would love to support you on. So in the comments below, I would love for you to share your favorite takeaway. And if you haven't yet, and you're watching this in the time that we put it out, please go to NikkiElledgeBrown.com/Todd. And that's my name, right? And your name. NikkiElledgeBrown.com/Todd. We had a rough night last night. And you can watch his full training series while it's up, so that you can get all of the tactical stuff and see his fancy infographics and start to think about how they can apply to whatever amount of time you have to apply to your business. And thank you so much, Todd. Again.
Anything for you, kiddo.
Bye.
Bye.
Buddy, turn it down, please. You know how to turn it down. Thank you. Bless you. Okay, I'm recording now, okay? That's what we're talking about, people.